Hey guys, here's a nice game in the French. I'm going to go through the game first. My opponent's rated 15, about 1530, and I was rated 1500 exactly. And we're going to go through the game, and then we're going to go through the analysis. So I played quite well, but there were definitely mistakes on both sides. It's one of those that comes out as a wild game, but you came out on top. And the key thing is that analysing your games is so important. The reason is, if you play chess, you could play 100 games a day. What you're doing is you're practicing what you already know. And you might discover some new things that are just outside of your normal way of responding, way of thinking, all of that stuff, right? But it's the analysis that is going to tell you, it's going to help you to discover the things that you don't know, the things that are just outside of your normal range of reference, right? Okay, so let's jump into the game. So we have e4, e6, the French defense, knight to f3, and d5. Now in the French you can almost pre-move d5. Apparently you can play this against practically anything that white chooses to do. And now they advance the pawn to e5. Slightly unusual, second pawn move on move 3, but hey. And now c5. So I'm staking my claim here for the centre. And it's looking quite good. And we have d4, so now c takes d4 is exchanging a wing pawn for a central pawn. And knight takes, and now I play my knight to c6, proposing a trade of knights. This is what I expected, the bishop pin. And we simply break the pin now. So something you can do here in the French, if you play the French, you will see this situation a lot, where you have white's light squared bishops come out to pin your knight. Now what you can do at this point is you can simply capture that pawn. Obviously it's not my go, but if you capture the pawn, this is the triangular trap, and white thinks, okay, well I'll capture the bishop with check, but then you can recapture with the knight. So even if the knight's under attack or whatever there, you can quite often get away with that. So anyway, we have knight out here, and here I should have actually captured the pawn, according to the analysis. But I bring out my other bishop, it's developing move, and it pins this guy. So we have castles on white side, and I decide to capture the knight and double and isolate the pawns there on the c-file. So we've got an isolated a-pawn, doubled and isolated pawns on the c-file, and this guy is feeling fairly isolated as well. Right, now I play my knight to e7, defends his pawn in this knight, prepares the castle, bishop out, and now, only now I grab the pawn. We have bishop takes, and I recapture here with the knight. Now the knight comes in, so the knight's clearly looking at this, which is an annoyance. So if he gets to play that, I'm in check, you can't block a knight check, and if you can't capture the attacker, you have to move. So we don't want that. So I decide to castle and avoid that situation. Now, I guess if my knight was still here, then that move wouldn't have been possible for white. Knight comes in anyway, now attacking this pawn on b7. So I decide to throw in a counter attack. And the reason is, now that I'm attacking the bishop, okay? Now, if the knight should capture the pawn here, I can simply move my queen and attack the knight. And then white would have two pieces under attack and cannot save both, right? The knight's on a light square, there's no way the bishop can defend it, and there's no way the knight can defend the bishop all the way over there. So he retreats the bishop, now I move my queen to c7, deciding to attack the attacker himself. The knight moves up there, and I attack the knight again. Now the knight is actually starting to run out of squares. Can't go there because of the queen. Can't go there because of queen and rook. Can't go here because the queen will take. Can't go there because the queen will take. He's really only got one square right now, which is d4. White here decides to defend the knight with the rook, and I simply push a6 to kick the knight away. Now, white thinks for a bit, over a minute, and plays queen to e2, seemingly offering up the knight. So if I capture the knight here, white's got queen takes e6, which comes with check, and it's a fork on my knight as well. So I would get a knight, doubling my own pawns. then white wins a wins a pawn, my king has to move, and then white wins a knight as well. So white's actually a pawn up in that. So we don't want that, do we? So e5, and this is a nice move because I'm getting my pawns onto dark squares. White's only remaining bishop is on a dark square, and now this bishop only has 2 squares to roam to because of my pawns covering all of these. And this pawn, of course, is in the way. So now queen comes in. And what's going on here is why you have to ask the question, what is my opponent thinking of? What is my opponent's plan? Why did they make that move? Well, he's attacking the knight on d7, which is undefended. So this knight's kind of awkward on that square for a couple of reasons. It stopped the queen from defending that square. It's retreated into the board. And so I really should have recaptured with a queen a few moves ago. So rook a to d8 defends. Queen comes into e6 with check, and the king moves to h8. Now the knight comes in, so there's a threat here of knight to f7 with a fork on king and rook. Now if the knight does do this, my king only has 1 square to go to, and then when the knight captures the rook, the king will be in check, which isn't nice at all. So how do we resolve this kind of situation? There's a very imminent threat. Okay? So I now play knight to g6. So I decide here that if the knight wants to come in here, I can capture with a rook, and let's say queen captures and I get the bishop. So I've basically traded a rook for 2 minor pieces, and that's a decent trade for black. The knight does indeed come in, I capture the knight, queen has to take the rook, and I get the bishop. Okay, so now temporarily I'm 2 pawns in front, but now rook takes the pawn on b7. So now I'm 1 pawn in front. Well, I'm basically, I've got 2 knights for a rook, which is not too bad. Plus I have a better pawn structure, got a 5 and a 1. White has a 3, and then basically like 2 1s. These isolated pawns are not going to be easy to defend. So now I drop the queen back to attack the rook, and also to defend this knight. So now, if we have like rook takes, I can recapture with the queen. What I can't do, of course, is rook takes, because then we have queen f8, and that's checkmate. So I need to be careful there. Now white brings across his other knight, and I decide here, sorry, his other rook, I always get confused in rooks and knights. Doubling up the rooks on this open file, and I don't think that there's an immediate threat here. Obviously, if this knight wasn't there, then there'd be queen takes g7, and that would be unpleasant. But the knight is doing a decent job right now. It's defended by rook and queen. It's attacked twice, and we're kind of okay. So I decide to push d4, and the threat here is that the knight's looking at that square on g2, and so's the queen. So I have a threat of mating 1. White must respond to this. White doesn't have any decent checks, so decides to play f3 at this point. Now I reroute my knight, looking at this square with a fork on the queen and the rook, because the knight really hasn't got any kind of immediate future up there. So, and now rook 1 to b6, attacking my queen. So trying to get my queen away from the defense of this knight. Then maybe rook can capture, we'll see what happens. But now I simply capture on c3, because I see that I have e1, queen e1 would be mate. Right? White thinks here for 47 seconds and captures the rook with the queen, but then it's checkmate in 1. Okay, so that felt like a pretty good game. I was fairly comfortable, but when you look at the analysis, the graph is kind of all over the place. So I definitely had a really good advantage in the middle of the game, gave the advantage away, regained some advantage. At the master level, 2 points difference is pretty much winning. And then I go to +5, so white is in a completely winning situation and then completely loses, as we saw. So let's see what we can learn from the analysis. Okay. Now, I'm not looking for polishing inaccuracies so much as what were my biggest mistakes, and more importantly, what did I miss, and how can I improve? Okay, so this is all book book stuff. Pawn out is book. Pawn takes is book. Knight takes d4 is best. Okay, so now knight to c6 is best. Excellent. Best. And this is an inaccuracy. Should have taken the knight. Okay, fair enough. That's a mistake. He said I should have simply captured the pawn straight away here. The bishop's completely protected. It was a free pawn. I didn't take it at the first opportunity. So the machine says I should have taken it. Castles is an inaccuracy, but we're not concerned with inaccuracies. That's excellent. Knight takes d4 is slightly better. Yeah, I guess because a queen can't recapture straight away because I've got bishop takes bishop. Also, let's say I take there, queen captures, I take bishop, right? Even if knight oh, hang on, I thought I had a knight. No, I was thinking I might be able to get my knight to there, but my knight's already off the board. Anyway, so bishop takes is excellent. Again, so now it wanted me to take this knight, which to me I would have maybe undoubled the pawns. I don't know, not quite sure why that, but now bishop out is a mistake. Bishop takes c6 is best. Okay, now I finally grab the pawn, and now I'm 1 point up. Bishop takes. Knight takes, it says here, is good, but queen takes was better. And we've seen that for a few reasons, right? I'm activating my queen here. I'm getting my queen out of this pin. So right now this knight is stuck and pinned. So queen takes would have been ideal. Also, it's defending this square, as we see later on. Knight comes around, mistake, because of it allows me to castle, which I do. So now I'm 2.3 in front. Knight to d6 is a mistake. Right, that's an inaccuracy. It said I should have just moved the knight and attacked this guy. Okay. But even so, I'm in a winning position now. Bishop retreats, inaccurate. Queen there is excellent. And now queen c4 was best. So what did I miss? I missed a fork. Right, queen to here. I'm attacking both the knight and the bishop at the same time. And that would have been better than this move, which is, so this has got me at -3. That would have been -5. Very, very winning. Okay, should have moved the knight. That's a mistake. I should have played e5. Okay, just trapping the bishop in. Also removing the square from the knight, I guess. So maybe e5 first to cover this square, and then maybe a6 would have given the knight actually nowhere to go. Queen here, inaccuracy, best move, that's okay. A blunder. Blunder because of queen e6, which is actually, I think, what's played next, right? Now, so it says what I should have played is queen back here. That's an interesting one. So queen back here simply defends this knight, this slightly awkward knight. Rook to here is a blunder, and now white is winning. It says with this move, I move my king. Knight in here is best. It's got white winning now, plus 2.5. Best move, blunder. Because of this, because of what's played. Rook takes that. Okay, says he should have just taken the free pawn instead. Rook takes, yep, and now again black is winning. Queen takes. That's a mistake. It's a mistake to grab a hanging bishop because of rook takes b7, which is what's played. Okay, but now it's got black slightly better. That's the best move. That's the best move. That's the best move. That's the best move. Knight to f5 is a blunder. Okay, so this is the bit on the report here where we go there. Suddenly, I'm in a lost position. Plus 5.9. Now that means that white is 5.9, equivalent of 5.9 points in front, because of rook d7. And then it says I would have had to have played rook to c8, which is interesting. But he misses that. He says rook. This would have been a winning for white. Okay, Now, obviously, you see, if I'd have taken here with a rook, checkmate, okay? If I'd have taken here with a queen, that would have been a mistake, because queen takes queen, and then if rook takes, mate in one, right? Because the only way to prevent mate, and that's mate, okay? Now, white failed to calculate that. I also failed to calculate that. So this is, you know, goes from -10, well, no, goes from, if he'd have captured the rook, that would have been winning. I couldn't have recaptured, but this was simply a missed win, and now black is winning. So it says not, oh yeah, I could have just taken the rook. Haha, completely missed it, you see? So, you know, even whatever your rating is, players at 1500 make bad mistakes. I mean, this is just a sitter. I mean, my opponent has moved their rook to a square where it is attacked by a knight. In fact, attacked twice. So that simply gave up a rook. That was a mistake, but it's still good for that, and then obviously mate in one. So here, yeah, they had to move the rook back to prevent checkmate. Then I still couldn't have captured the queen because I still had rook to there. So yeah, that would have been interesting. But yeah, what a wild game. So what is the computer teaching me? Well, one thing is, just look at the whole board, right? Forget what you think is going on. Forget your idea about the way the game's going and what's happening. Look at what your opponent just did. Did my opponent just play something stupid? If you ever find yourself playing somebody who's 50 points higher, or 200 points higher, or 500 points higher, don't forget to look out for stupid moves, because we all make stupid moves. Right? Even masters make stupid moves from time to time and walk into forks and blunder pieces. It happens, right? Here, this was just simply, you know, just winning, really. I should have just captured that. Here, should have just captured. And now I'm full 2 knights up. And what's my opponent got? You know, I could quite easily force an exchange here. Got good pawns, capture there, rook up there. You know, it's all good. So, moral of the story, you've got to be open to the possibility that your opponent is a numbskull and is going to make errors, because they're human. You're not playing stockfish, you're playing a human being. Yeah, just always be open to the possibility that mistakes will be made, because they are most of the time. Yeah, every now and again we can all have near perfect games, and that's great, right? But the great thing about chess is that even when you have a good game, even when you have a win, even when you beat somebody higher rated than you, every game's a lesson, every day's a learning day. You never get there, right? There's always something more to learn, but very often it's the simple stuff, right? Particularly at the beginner and intermediate level, okay? So there you go. That's today's chess video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.